Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we take the articles, the research, the notes you send us, and, well, we pull out the key nuggets of knowledge. We want to help you get quickly up to speed.
That's the goal.
And today, we're plunging into some really significant recent legislation.
Yeah.
The One Big Beautiful Bill Act.
Yeah.
You might know it as OBBA, maybe BBB.
Right, lots of acronyms.
It was signed into law July 4th, 2025. And look, this isn't just another bill. It feels like a monumental shift, doesn't it? For the economy, the social safety net.
Oh, absolutely. And even the fabric of the political system, it touches everything.
So that's our job today, right?
Precisely. Our mission with this deep dive is to unpack exactly what OBBA involves. We'll look at its sweeping tax and spending policies. They're a core part of President Trump's second-term agenda, as you know.
Okay.
We'll explore the specific provisions, the economic projections people are talking about, and of course, the pretty contentious political climate that shaped its passage.
Yeah, you can't ignore that.
No, and we've pulled insights from detailed reports, places like the Congressional Budget Office, the Tax Foundation, the Commonwealth Fund, even academic research on political polarization.
Right.
And what's really fascinating here, I think, is just how deeply interconnected all these pieces are. It's not just one thing.
Okay, so let's unpack this big, beautiful bill, as they call it. From a high level, what are the main areas it covers? What are some of the key things that will affect Americans directly?
Well, at its core, the OBBBA makes permanent the individual tax rates from the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act.
Ah, the TCJA rates.
Yeah.
Right, those were set to expire end of this year.
Exactly. So that's a big piece. But it's much, much more than just extending those rates.
Okay, because looking beyond those permanent extensions, it seems like this bill is just packed with some very specific and often temporary tax deductions, and even entirely new kinds of accounts.
Yeah, that's right.
Could you maybe highlight some of those? Who are they trying to benefit here?
Absolutely. The bill does introduce some notable temporary tax deductions aimed at specific groups. For instance, take the state and local tax deduction, SALT.
Always controversial.
Always. It raises the cap to $40,000 for taxpayers earning under $500,000.
Okay.
But, and this is key, this cap snaps back to $10,000 after 5 years.
So a temporary boost.
Right. The takeaway is a substantial, if temporary, tax break. About $175 billion over 10 years, mainly helping higher income folks in those high tax states. You know, a compromise figure, some wanted more.
Right, I remember hearing about higher numbers being pushed. Okay, what about other new deductions for different groups?
Yeah, there are several others. It creates new tax deductions for tips and overtime pay.
Interesting.
For workers earning under $150,000, each one is capped at $25,000 and again set to expire in 2028.
So targeted relief for certain incomes.
You could think of it that way, yeah. There's also a deduction up to $10,000 a year for auto loan interest.
On specific cars.
On U.S. assembled cars, yeah. Purchased between 2025 and 2028. And it phases out for higher earners, too.
Okay.
And one more for seniors. A temporary deduction up to $6,000. Also expires in 2028. The aim here, they say, is to help about 88% of seniors reduce their Social Security tax burden.
Okay. That's a lot of temporary measures.
Yeah.
I also saw something about changes to the child tax credit and these new Trump accounts. What's going on there?
A good catch. The child tax credit, it sees a modest increase, goes from $2,000 to $2,200 per child.
Okay.
And it's indexed to inflation going forward. However, the refundable part isn't indexed, meaning lower income households, those who benefit most from the refundability, don't see an increased credit in quite the same way.
Gotcha. And the Trump accounts, that sounds completely new.
It is. It's a truly novel feature. The bill creates these special accounts for kids born between 2025 and 2028.
Okay.
The government makes an initial deposit of $1,000 at birth.
$1,000.
Yep. And then parents can contribute up to $5,000 annually. The money grows tax deferred for future uses like higher education, job training, maybe even a home down payment.
Interesting. So a lot happening on the individual tax side. But this bill also touches energy and the national debt, right?
It absolutely does. On energy, it phases out many of the clean energy tax credits.
From the Inflation Reduction Act.
Exactly. Things specifically targeting wind, solar, electric vehicle projects. And at the same time, it actively promotes fossil fuels. So a big shift there.
And the debt ceiling.
Crucially, yes.
Yeah.
This bill raises the U.S. debt ceiling by a staggering $5 trillion.
$5 trillion. Wow. Okay. So beyond these extensive tax code shifts, the bill makes some truly substantial changes to critical social safety net programs, Medicaid SNA.
Yes, this is where you see some of the most significant social impacts.
What exactly is being altered, and who's most affected?
Well, the OBBA includes massive cuts. We're talking over $1.2 trillion in federal spending cuts, primarily from Medicaid and SNAP.
Over $1 trillion.
Yeah. For Medicaid specifically, it introduces some, frankly, unprecedented new requirements. For the first time, it adds work requirements.
Work requirements for Medicaid.
Yes, for recipients aged 19 to 64, mandating 80 hours per month of work with pretty limited exemptions.
No.
It also requires states to charge copays up to $35 per service for enrollees just above the federal poverty level, between 100% and 138% FPL.
Copays for people just over the poverty line.
Correct. It also cuts something called the Medicaid provider tax, and it demands eligibility checks every 6 months instead of annually. Much more frequent.
More hurdles.
Feels that way. Oh, and there was a provision aimed at preventing Medicaid funding for Planned Parenthood included. That part was temporarily blocked by a federal judge, but it was in the bill.
So it's not just cuts, it sounds like new barriers to access too. And what about SNFP, the Food Assistance Program?
Similar story there, similar to Medicaid. For SNFP, beneficiaries aged 18 to 64 are now required to work at least 80 hours per month.
Same work requirement.
Same threshold. And there's another twist. States with a high error rate, above 6%, must now contribute up to 15% of the SNFP benefit costs themselves.
Ah, so shifting costs to the states.
Exactly. It puts more financial burden on states and, again, new requirements on beneficiaries.
So what does all this mean? For individuals relying on these programs and for the states trying to manage them, it sounds like the ripple effects could be massive.
The implications are, indeed profound. The Congressional Budget Office, the CBO, they estimate the OBBBA would cause about 10.9 million Americans to lose health insurance coverage.
10.9 million.
Yes, and these Medicaid cuts are being described as the largest in the program's entire history. There are real concerns about rural hospital closures, potentially leaving whole communities without healthcare access.
Just devastating for some areas. And what about the broader economic impact of these cuts, beyond the individual coverage loss?
Yeah, from an economic perspective, this is where the picture gets, well, quite stark. According to the Commonwealth Fund, these combined Medicaid and SNAP cuts could lead to a staggering 1 million jobs lost nationwide in 2026 alone.
1 million jobs.
1 million jobs, including nearly 5,477,000 healthcare jobs specifically.
Wow.
State GDPs are estimated to decline by $113 billion. State and local tax revenues down by $8.8 billion. It's a classic ripple effect, you know?
Right.
Reduced revenue for hospitals, clinics, even retailers. That leads to job cuts, which leads to less consumer spending across lots of industries. It creates a downturn.
1 million jobs.
Yeah.
It's hard to even wrap your head around. That's like the entire population of a major city like San Jose or Austin. Gone.
It's a huge number.
It's not just a number on a page. It's communities really feeling the squeeze. So states are truly facing a fiscal dilemma here, caught between raising taxes or cutting other vital programs.
Exactly. They face really tough choices. Either raise state taxes to offset these federal cuts, which were about 6% of current state taxes per resident, so not insignificant.
Right.
Or cut other crucial programs, like education. Potentially up to 19% of state education spending per pupil could be on the chopping block in some places.
19% of school funding. Oof.
Yeah. And some states, like South Dakota, Missouri, Oklahoma, they have constitutional requirements for Medicaid expansion. They're particularly stuck. They might be forced to raise taxes or slash other budgets to make it work.
Beyond these big economics figures, what about the human impact? Reducing access to programs like Medicaid.
Well, there's a lot of research on this. It highlights that Medicaid coverage, especially when people get it early in life, it's associated with, better adult health, fewer chronic conditions, fewer hospitalizations,
Makes sense.
higher high school graduation rates, even greater financial security. It's been shown to reduce personal debt, prevent bankruptcies. Some argue it even pays for itself in the long run because you have healthier, higher tax-paying citizens.
Right.
So the warning is that these cuts could really exacerbate inequality and health disparities, potentially leading to thousands of preventable deaths each year.
Okay, we've seen how this bill reshapes taxes, social programs, impacting daily lives. But let's zoom out now to maybe the most alarming projection of all, how OBBBA impacts the national debt.
Yeah, the big picture.
We're seeing figures that genuinely shake economic models. What's the long-term prognosis here?
It is a critical question. The CBO, initially, they estimated the OBBBA would increase deficits by $2.4 trillion over the next decade, 2025 to 2034.
2.4 trillion, okay.
But that's excluding the cost of servicing the extra debt, the interest payments.
Right.
When you add those in, the cumulative hit to the deficit rises to $3.0 trillion.
$3 trillion added to the deficit.
Yes, and that would push the debt held by the public from a projected already high 117.1% of GDP up to 123.8% of GDP by the end of 2034.
So what does this actually mean for the economy long term? I heard something quite unsettling about economic models literally crashing.
Yeah, this is, well, it's pretty chilling. Economists at Wharton, using their complex computer models, they found that under current U.S. debt projections,
Which are already bad.
which are already predicting debt potentially skyrocketing, from $40 trillion now to maybe $200 trillion over the next 30 years.
Wow.
Under those projections, they reported they cannot even model out a functioning long-term economy. Their models simply could not compute. They reported model not converging.
The model just breaks.
Essentially, yes. The stark insight here is that we might be on a path where the sheer volume of debt threatens the very computability of our economic future. It suggests that if the debt keeps rising at this rate, it just becomes unsustainable. The math won't math, as they say.
The numbers just won't add up. That perfectly captures it. So what are the practical consequences of that kind of unsustainability for everyday Americans?
Well, rising debt is projected to cause interest rates to rise significantly. Just think about it. Within a decade, interest payments on our national debt could eat up 1/3 of all taxes collected.
A third, just on interest.
Yeah. And potentially rising to 80% in a couple of decades. If most of the country's money is just going to pay interest.
Then it can't go anywhere else.
Exactly. It can't be invested in growing the economy, improving infrastructure, schools, anything else. And that typically leads to an economy that starts to shrink.
And how soon could this happen?
This kind of scenario is projected to potentially unfold within about 20 years.
20 years, okay.
Yeah.
It seems like the passage of this bill itself was a real battle. Has very narrowly, despite strong opposition.
Extremely narrow.
It really brings to mind these ongoing discussions about political polarization, legislative gridlock. How does this deep dive into OBBA illuminate that whole issue?
Oh, the OBBA's legislative history is a prime example of political polarization in action. You said it. It passed with razor-thin margins, mostly party-line votes.
What were the final votes again?
In the House, it was 215 to 214, with one present vote.
Wow.
And in the Senate, 51 to 50, with the vice president casting the tie-breaking vote. This was despite universal Democratic opposition.
So how did they even get it through the Senate without 60 votes?
Well, its passage really highlights a key political tool: budget reconciliation.
Or the special process.
Exactly. It's a legislative process that lets certain budget-related bills bypass the usual 60-vote filibuster rule in the Senate. Allows for a simple majority vote.
But it has limits, right?
It does. It comes with strict rules, like the Byrd rule. That rule prevents non-budgetary items from being included.
Like what got stripped out here?
Well, things like a proposed 10-year ban on state-level AI regulations or eliminating a tax on gun silencers. Those things were deemed non-budgetary by the Senate parliamentarian and removed. It has to stay focused on fiscal matters.
So even using reconciliation, it wasn't smooth sailing. There were internal battles within the Republican Party.
Absolutely. There were reports of intense internal negotiations. You had the deficit hawks pushing for even deeper cuts.
Right.
And then you had more moderate Republicans raising concerns, especially about the scale of the Medicaid cuts and maybe some of the clean energy changes. It wasn't a unified path, even within the majority party.
And how did the public react to all of this as it was unfolding?
Well, multiple polls back in June 2025 showed general skepticism, disapproval, really, from Americans. Opposition numbers were ranging from 49% up to 64%, depending on the poll.
So not popular.
Not broadly popular, no. Critics from various organizations, political figures, they really went after it. Called it a regressive tax structure full of gimmicks.
I heard the reverse Robin Hood nickname.
Yes, that one stuck. Some called it the largest upward transfer of wealth from the poor to the rich in American history. Pretty strong language.
This whole situation, the bill, the way it passed, it really seems to reflect these deeper issues of political division in the country. What are some of the core theories that help us understand this polarization? How do they play out here?
Yeah, this situation perfectly illustrates political polarization. And academic research gives us various lenses to understand it. For example, social identity theory.
Yeah.
That helps explain how strong party loyalties make compromise so difficult. People categorize strongly with their political party. They view opponents as outgroups. Makes it hard to find middle ground.
Right, us versus them.
Exactly. We also see elements of elite theory, perhaps, where political leaders might strategically amplify divides to rally their base, maybe manipulating information to shape the discourse.
And the media's role.
Huge. Agenda-setting theory highlights how media shapes public perception, just by deciding which issues to highlight and how to frame them, often with a bias that, intentional or not, reinforces polarization, creates those echo chambers. And ultimately, these theories show how factors like, growing economic inequality, the rise of populist movements, and just how political parties strategize, it all contributes to a system where reaching consensus becomes really, really challenging.
So what does this mean then for the ability of the government to actually get things done, to legislate effectively?
Well, polarization creates what experts call legislative gridlock.
Gridlock, yeah.
It means a really contentious policy process where compromise is just incredibly difficult. And that often leads to low legislative productivity. Things just don't get done.
Can you give an example?
Sure, think about the federal minimum wage. It hasn't increased since 2007, despite pretty broad agreement that it probably should. That's arguably a direct result of this kind of parliamentary stalemate.
Right.
And even when laws do get passed, like OBBBA, implementation can be super challenging because of ongoing ideological conflicts,
Right.
maybe inadequate funding fights, legal hurdles popping up.
Okay, let's broaden our view one last time. Beyond the direct tax changes, the program cuts, the debt implications, what are significant impacts are projected for the U.S. from this bill that we haven't maybe fully touched on yet?
Right. The effects definitely extend into other crucial areas. It signals a broader shift in national priorities, you could say. Take clean energy.
Okay.
The bill is widely described as, derailing renewable energy production in the U.S. It actively favors fossil fuels, as we mentioned.
An impact.
Expected to lead to significant job losses in that sector, factory closures, and generally deter investment in clean technologies. One group, Energy Innovation, estimates it could cost over 830,000 jobs.
830,000 jobs just in clean energy.
That's their estimate, yeah.
And what about immigration, education access? Those are areas that touch so many lives directly.
Huge areas. On immigration enforcement, the bill allocates, frankly, unprecedented funding to Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE.
How much?
Its budget increases from roughly $10 billion to over $100 billion by 2029.
A tenfold increase.
Essentially, yes. Making it the most heavily funded federal law enforcement agency. This includes billions for more border wall construction, expanding migrant detention beds, hiring thousands of new agents.
Creating capacity for
deporting up to 1 million people annually. That's the projection. Critics, naturally, are warning about mass detentions and severely restricted access to asylum.
a dramatic shift. And education.
Regarding education access, the bill introduces new accountability rules for colleges. It caps unsubsidized student loans for graduate students, and it restructures income-driven repayment programs for student loans, potentially raising monthly payments for many.
So potentially making college harder to afford.
Critics definitely warn it could significantly reduce college access, especially for low-income students, and potentially divert public funds toward private schools through some mechanisms.
And finally, what's the sort of big picture sentiment on overall economic stability from financial institutions, maybe?
Well, major players have weighed in. The Economist magazine, for example, criticized the bill pretty harshly, call it an example of America's creeping dysfunction.
Strong words.
Yeah, arguing it worsens deficits, uses tax gimmicks, and fundamentally threatens economic stability by increasing risk for investment. And significantly, Moody's, the rating agency, they actually downgraded U.S. debt from its top AAA rating. And they specifically cited efforts to pass this bill as one of the reasons.
Wow, a credit downgrade tied to this bill.
Yes, that's a major signal.
We have truly taken a deep dive today into this one big, beautiful bill act, its intricate web of impacts. It's just vast.
It really is.
It's clear this piece of legislation touches nearly every aspect of American life. You know, from your tax liability to the future of healthcare, social programs, even the broader economic stability of the entire nation.
Absolutely.
And the discussions around it, the contentious way it was passed,
Yeah.
it really does highlight these persistent challenges of political polarization in the country today.
It really underscores how these big legislative decisions, even ones framed as these comprehensive solutions, can have such profound and sometimes contradictory effects,
Right.
impacting different groups of people in very different ways and really shaping the long-term fiscal and social landscape of the USA for years to come.
So understanding these implications, both the intended and unintended consequences, and the different viewpoints on them.
It's just crucial, isn't it, for any well-informed citizen, especially when you consider the significant tax implications and these broader economic and social shifts it seems to be ushering in.
Absolutely. Well, we hope this deep dive has given you a clearer, maybe more nuanced picture of this incredibly complex subject and its potential impact on you and folks across the country.
All the best, and we certainly look forward to exploring another crucial topic with you again very soon.